There's been this IKEA-style catalog called Hack Care. It captures different ideas to make your home a friendlier environment for people living with dementia. So it's essentially like a toolkit or guide for caregivers that pulls together practical hacks, ideas, and tips and tricks to simplify life in the home, leveraging IKEA furniture, but is not affiliated with IKEA at all. It's kind of using the home almost like an interface to play with, shaping the living environment into specific micro worlds that's tied to improving the well-being of a person. And like the Algot universe, a universe conceived around an armchair. So there's stuff around fidget play and creating like play boards. There's like the chair, thinking about the living table.
Wait, it's amazing. All of these space structures are all like things that you can buy from IKEA right now, and then these are just like adapted for particular needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think they think beyond just like the IKEA furniture itself, but the rationale is just that IKEA furniture is accessible and a lot of it is in homes. So that was a bit of a basis for it, but it's just made kind of from a design sense, like an IKEA catalog. And
it actually reminds me a lot about other conversations we've been having from later about adaptive and sort of decentralized brands kind of emerging.
I'm curious about the language of worlds and universes. What's your take on where that's coming from? And
I think for me, the interesting part is like how they look at the home or different aspects of the home as different universes, whether it's around a furniture item or whether it's around eating as a ritual or...
I don't know that I've ever come across something that kind of thinks about world building like that, but I guess they're thinking it's like you're building a universe out of these elemental component parts that IKEA offers, and creating a home is creating a world.
How's it different from what IKEA promises in its advertising and stuff, you know? Like that your apartment will be the expression of your needs and aesthetics, you know? Because IKEA's big pioneering thing was to be like, no more inheriting of expensive furniture and no more passing along of these things. Everything can be from scratch, built to your needs and desires.
I'm curious about the idea of lifestyle, because obviously IKEA is selling a lifestyle like you're alluding to in a certain sense. But then this is almost like a sub-layer of that, because it's almost like you're having multiple worlds. Like you have the world of your home, and then you have these different specific areas that you're curating for someone who has a particular ability level or accessibility.
Yeah.
Almost like a re-curating of what IKEA is already offering you.
I almost can't tell how this is not just an IKEA catalog.
Yeah.
Well, in some of the language you read, you can see though, because there's a lot of information there about what you're placing on which shelves and stuff. Like it's more about how to use these pieces in particular. And I guess it calls itself a manifesto. The Ken Isaacs piece that we were referring to, by the way, is called a super chair, which does feel aligned with some of this, but like a chair where everything's close at hand and it kind of morphs into different forms.
I see what Ellen was saying about lifestyle though. If I imagine the lifestyle stack, the bottom layer is like the hardware that you're arranging, and then over that there are other things like care and like particular use cases like health or whatever, and this is like the next layer over the base layer that is IKEA hardware, right? Which is kind of, I don't know, it's like interesting thinking about it as like a layered.
It's an API. It's the API to IKEA.
Yeah, it is the API to IKEA.
IKEA is the platform, and then we have this new like widget.
What do you guys think this signals?
I'm curious how they made it, whether it involves people with dementia. Like, I'm curious, like, what process of design they took, whether it was like co-design, how involved were people.
I'm not sure about complete details, but yeah, they did a full design research process with caregivers and people living with dementia to get insights on what are already means that they've hacked the home or what are some of the needs, I guess, within the environment. And then it's a collaboration between like this philanthropic organization, an architecture firm, and a design firm. But in terms of like specifically more community engagement type, I'm not sure. I know for sure that in some of the interviews, one of the designer is a caregiver herself with parents who are living with dementia. So I think it does definitely draw from lived experience.
Nice.
So it's like weird synchrony because I was reading about dementia this morning. So it's funny. And I never, in 365 days this year, have I read about dementia. A series of nursing homes or care homes in the Netherlands that like a decade ago emerged for taking care of dementia. And their big innovation in how they frame dementia was typically there's like a very medicalized approach to it, which is that like people will freak out and get all kind of like paranoid and off because they'll get lost and they won't recognize their surroundings. They don't know how to like anchor themselves in space. And so then people would medically treat with drugs and things like that afterwards to calm them. But this Dutch place took the kind of inverse approach and was like, hey, actually, you don't have to change the person, you can change the environment. And so they started designing the environment in ways that made people feel more comfortable and things like this, to the point where they actually designed environments that were like simulations of their memories. So it wasn't, it would have things like if they thought they were in the 1950s, the staff would build a room so that they felt like they were in the 1950s because that would just calm them and make them better. And so there were ethical questions about whether or not, you should do that to somebody.
Right.
It reminds me of Temple Grandin's work also around autism and designing environments for people with autism.
Yeah, and similarly to this like retriggering memories, I've also heard abandoned malls being used to recreate these like memory environments where people from old folks' home or elderly communities would essentially take field trips to go for the experience.
Mall is memory palace.
I think there's different sound related apps and things for similar issues too, around like memory and having certain songs be able to trigger someone who has memory loss.
What do we think this is a signal of, if anything?
I think it would have been a signal, more of a stronger signal, if IKEA, like it became an actual IKEA project as well. A sort of like grassroots project that was outside of IKEA, but was supported by IKEA in some way, which would be a signal of brands adopting these like adaptive, community-centered grassroots approaches to brand building.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the IKEA as operating system, or whatever we want to call that metaphor, wherever we want to place it in the stack, is interesting because it is the brand that maybe you would start to imagine that it actually could have like apps in the physical world, because it's, there's so much optionality and standardization.
Yeah, I think the idea of it being like a modular approach to care is kind of interesting, because I feel like I've seen more examples of very specific, customized products that are for people with various ailments or accessibility levels. But this is like very accessible from a price point and a findability. You don't have to special order it. I don't know if there are other examples out there of people kind of democratizing things like this, but I haven't come across any yet.
Yeah, it's true. Medical equipment seems to be like notoriously expensive because the total addressable market or something is so small usually. So it has to be like, a glove is like $300 or something.
Interesting. Would this be a signal of pirate care?
No, because there's no conflictual relationship. There's no tension,
But it does potentially undercut those like highly professionalized medical furnishers.
You could frame it that way, yeah.
I think it's also like bringing the conversation to the caregiver. I think oftentimes they're kind of a neglected demographic, and yet they also need maybe even more support, but are a lot of times left alone to come up with these hacks. So I kind of like that democratization idea, and also just like redistributing resources, or even like it's almost like a crowdsourced resource in a way, and having everything in one place that's accessible.
Signal and noise, Valdez?
I don't know if there's anything like particularly ambiguous or like new in some sense. I feel like I've like seen a lot of these trends, whatever way we slice it, like around care or crowdsourcing information, or the end of the line of like a design fiction approach that uses the IKEA catalog as its base. I feel like I've seen a lot of those. I still think it's interesting, but I don't think I would put it as a signal for like the reason of like, there is some degree of like undercutting the business model of like how we take care of elderly people, where maybe in that regard there is something a little more uncertain.
Ellen, what do you think?
I'm on the fence too. There's definitely some newness to it, but I'm still on the fence.
Would it?
I think it would have been a signal if IKEA was involved in some way, or if they took this idea from the community and made it part of their catalog and started like layering up the stack that they're creating.
So it could be a signal if that's the
It could be a signal.
But that doesn't strike me as that novel. Like brands do get ideas from their fans, their crowds and everything all the time. Like that doesn't seem that novel. Is it a particular way that they would do it? Like the approach to a stack and an approach to sort of having apps or something?
I mean, I think one way could be, and this is something we've been talking about a lot, is like if there was like a way to share the benefits with the community, like to provide a stake in this project back to caregivers in some way. If they could have like financial benefits or a stake in this project in another way as well, I think that could be really cool.
Which could happen in the sense that there would be presumably sales that come as a result of this. So if those people who designed this got a piece of that.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's just changed is that it's just more possible to track ownership and like use over through like digital technologies now than has ever been possible before. So you can actually have these sort of decentralized approaches to the innovation and community building in a way that wasn't possible before. That's what's different.
And also to allow it to continuously evolve.
Yeah, I lean to say it's a signal for the same reason Macy did, but if that's right, I think that's interesting. The idea that the focus is on the caregiver rather than recipient and facilitating that. So that's an interesting sort of design space that maybe this is a signal that there's something going on there.